Yo ho ho! What a nautical themed week it has been! No, I'm not talking about those rich people who got crushed like a soda can. A vessel off the coast of Greece the other week carrying over 700 migrants from Pakistan capsized, causing 300 to die and multiple more to be injured and missing. The incident has caused massive criticism against both Greek and European authorities for the mishandling of the situation. Some people think this was caused by the recent rise of anti-immigration politics sweeping across Europe. Now that is where I wanted to end the video, but the TikTok algorithm decided that I needed to see something else first.
Will they have the full range of human rights which people here in Azerbaijan do not have?
You think they do not have it? Free media and opposition.
Because this is what I'm told by independent sources in this country.
Which independent sources?
Many independent sources.
But if you couldn't name that, means that you're just inventing the story.
So you're saying the media is not under state control?
Not at all.
Now, if you're like me, you're thinking, oh man, that seems like a definite dictator defending his crime. Well, imagine my shock when I went into the comments section and that is not what I found at all. Instead, what I found was hundreds of comments of Americans defending this actual authoritarian leader from Azerbaijan. Go ahead! Which one's Azerbaijan? I'll make it even easier. Which one's Azerbaijan? You went to school, you took geography. I went to American public school too, so I know you took geography. Which one's Azerbaijan? Ilham Aliyev is the current leader of Azerbaijan. In this interview, he's defending himself against his multiple different human rights abuses, and people were cheering for him because Trump, I really don't know anymore. And Azerbaijan, without surprise, is absolutely loaded with human rights abuses. Ilham Aliyev has been serving as the president of Azerbaijan since 2003, and he's only the country's fourth ever president. And it gets even weirder because after the fall of the USSR, Azerbaijan had a couple presidents, none of which lasted over a year. That is, of course, until this guy came along, Haydar Aliyev. Haydar would take power in 1993 and would hold office for a little over 10 years. Now, if it seems like Haydar Aliyev and Ilham Aliyev are related, you would be correct because Haydar Aliyev is the father of Ilham Aliyev. Aliyev is also notorious for using his power to silence critics. Amnesty International reported on a bunch of journalists who were killed under the Aliyev administration, and I'm just going to give you off a few. Just for some context, on February 8th of that year, the government introduced a new media law that required all owners of media companies to live inside Azerbaijan. However, that was not the only crackdown, as they also said that all journalists in the country had to register with the government and were told that they had to report the news fairly without getting any definitions as to what that exactly means. A couple days after this, on February 15th, two journalists, Fatima Molavani and Savin Shedegova, were beaten, detained, and verbally abused by police officers who threatened them because they were journalists. September 20th, Ahmed Mamadi was jailed for 30 days for criticizing the president. For reference, Ahmed is a head of an NGO. And on December 9th, when Bakhtiar Hayev was sentenced to 50 days in prison for criminal hooliganism after he'd reported getting kidnapped, thrown in a car with a sack over his head, and two men who beat him and told him not to criticize the interior minister. I don't even need to go down the entire list because just to show you how bad it has gotten for journalists in Azerbaijan, Rasim Aliyev, not related, was beaten nearly to death in the streets for criticizing a local soccer club. But again, we come to the same questions as always. Who the fuck is that guy? And how did we even get to a point where this has become the norm? It just seems like every other day there's a new authoritarian popping up. There's Bolsonaro in Brazil, you got Erdogan in Turkey, the dictator with the funniest name of all time, Bong Bong Marcos from the Philippines. Xi Jinping got rid of term limits, so now he's like emperor for life. Then there's that one fascist girl from Italy, Giorgina Meloni. All of these people feel a lot like that one friend of your dad's who's a little bit too into hunting and thinks it's funny to say non-PC things to piss people off. Pardon me, Greg, for not understanding the comedic value of taking 3 shots of vodka and getting up on stage to scream the N-word. Or that a Nazi flag planted in his front yard is not historical memorabilia. But how did we get here? What did you do? It's a mix of factors, but surprise, surprise, like always, it has to do with Trump. Not specifically about any of Trump's policies, but just what Trump did to America on a global stage. Trump made America look divided, separated, not unified, unable to fight a war together. And what a lot of people thought around the world was that this meant that America was going to be pulling back militarily. And thanks to Afghanistan, this is partially true. Nation building is expensive, and the American taxpayers have said, no more. I'm sorry, miss, but it is too expensive to teach your kids to read. But in other ways, the US has not just left its allies up and dry. It certainly proved that into Ukraine, falling back on the old American strategy of throwing money at stuff till it can't breathe anymore. And the rest of the world seems to have noticed. But there's also a second reason, and that seems to be because of a rising economic and possibly military alliance between the developing nations led by China. Nations like China, India, South Africa, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iran, all these nations that are developing incredibly quickly and not there yet are getting to a point where they can rival Western powers, are tired of not having a seat at the table, and they feel that they are now entitled to one. What it has become is kind of a counterweight to the United States-led Western sphere of influence. And this has not been helped when Western liberal institutions like the IMF have completely fucked up every try that they have given to help the developing world. Which leads us all back to the beginning with the migrants on the boat. The failed economic policies have led to an authoritarian rise across the developing world. Authoritarian grabs of power typically are accompanied by military violence. Military violence means economic disruption, getting us all the way back to that boat with 700 migrants. So what's the takeaway? That authoritarian leaders, when negative outcomes come from their policies, use it as justification to have greater control over their people. And to remember that we are getting closer and closer to a united Earth. I mean, that's the end goal, right? So we got to remember what kind of world we want to make when that happens.